Just bring the damn wine, can't you? His German was precise, cutting. I saw the waitress stiffen, just a hair. Table 7. Dominic Davenport, the shark himself. He thinks she doesn't understand. Thinks he's safe, mocking her in his mother tongue. Arrogant bastard. She's just a prop to him, part of the scenery in his power play with that Japanese businessman. He has no idea. She knows exactly what he's saying. Every clipped word, every cruel jab about stripping assets and cutting costs. The tremor in her hand as she poured the wine? Not fear, not anymore. They think she's invisible. They're so wrong. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything, and how much they'll regret underestimating her. Just bring the damn wine, can't you? His German was precise, cutting. I saw the waitress stiffen, just a hair. Table 7. Dominic Davenport, the shark himself. He thinks she doesn't understand. Thinks he's safe, mocking her in his mother tongue. Arrogant bastard. She's just a prop to him, part of the scenery in his power play with that Japanese businessman. He has no idea. She knows exactly what he's saying. Every clipped word, every cruel jab about stripping assets and cutting costs. The tremor in her hand as she poured the wine? Not fear, not anymore. They think she's invisible. They're so wrong. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything, and how much they'll regret underestimating her. Arya throbbed with the pulse of New York's elite. Every clink of crystal, every hushed conversation, every perfectly tailored suit contributed to a symphony of power, a concerto conducted by men like Dominic Davenport. He surveyed the room from his coveted corner booth, a predator assessing his domain. His reflection gleamed in the polished surfaces, a testament to his ruthless ambition. Across from him, Pierce, his obsequious junior partner, nodded enthusiastically, a human bobblehead fueled by the crumbs of Davenport's success. They were on the precipice of a deal, a hostile takeover that would cement their positions as masters of the universe. Then Lena approached. To the rest of the diners at Aria, she was simply part of the well-oiled machine, a necessary component in the pursuit of pleasure and status. But beneath the surface of the dutiful waitress simmered a history, a rage, a determination no one suspected. 19 months. 19 months she'd walked these plush carpets, the ache in her feet a constant reminder of her fall. From the sterile efficiency of Deutsche Strategic Bank in Berlin, where she'd strategized million-dollar deals in designer heels, to this gilded cage where spilled wine and whispered judgments were her daily bread. Lena had become a ghost, a chameleon, expertly blending into the background. Lena didn't exist, only the waitress. Each night was a carefully constructed performance, a delicate dance of anticipating needs before they were voiced, of maneuvering laden trays of seared scallops and truffle foam with the grace of a ballerina. She'd perfected the art of being present yet invisible, a silent observer in a world that had once been hers. But tonight, the air crackled with a different kind of energy. The scent of money was heavier, the victories more brazen. Wall Street wolves celebrated conquests she understood all too well, battles fought with ruthless efficiency and devastating consequences. Maria, her manager, a sturdy woman with eyes that missed nothing, offered a knowing glance as she assigned Lena to table 7. Davenport, she'd warned, her voice low. Try to keep your head down. Davenport. The name was synonymous with power, with relentless ambition. His face, plastered across the covers of financial magazines, was a monument to unchecked capitalism, a predatory smile, eyes that calculated worth in fractions of a second. Aria was his hunting ground, and tonight, Lena was in his path. He was precisely as advertised, impeccably dressed in a suit that likely cost more than her monthly rent, his silver hair swept back from a face sculpted by years of ruthless decisions. Beside him, Pierce hung on his every word, desperate to impress. And then there was the third man, Mr. Kobayashi, his demeanor calm, observant, radiating an aura of quiet power. He was the prize, the key to unlocking their next fortune. Chateau Margaux, Davenport barked, not bothering to make eye contact. A command, not a request. He tested the waters, using the legend of the wine itself, not its name. An excellent choice, sir, Lena replied, her voice even, professional. No fawning, no unnecessary commentary, just acknowledgement and retreat. Efficiency, respect, invisibility, the trifecta of survival. She returned with the wine, executing the ritual presentation with practiced precision. Davenport remained engrossed in conversation with Mr. Kobayashi, discussing market volatility with an arrogance that bordered on contempt. Only Pierce watched her every move, ensuring not a single drop of the precious liquid sullied the pristine white tablecloth. "The key to our strategy, Kobayashi," Davenport said, his English laced with a condescension that made Lena's skin crawl, "is identifying undervalued assets burdened by bloated and inefficient management. We don't just invest, we cleanse. We strip away the sentimentality and expose the raw, profitable core." Mr. Kobayashi nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "A philosophy of disruption, Davenport-san." "Precisely. Disruption is another word for progress," Davenport declared, swirling the wine in his glass, inhaling its bouquet, offering a curt nod of approval to the liquid itself, as if it were a supplicant begging for his judgment. As Lena poured sparkling water for Pierce, a familiar chill crept up her spine. It wasn't just Davenport's public persona, the ubiquitous image of the corporate raider. It was something in the rhythm of his speech, the cadence of his arrogance, the way he spoke of cleansing and efficiency. It echoed the boardrooms in Berlin, the clipped tones of the men who had orchestrated her downfall. She shook the feeling away, dismissing it as a ghost of her past. Every powerful man sounded the same, didn't they? Her history was locked away, buried deep. Her only goal was to make it through the night, collect her tips, and retreat to the anonymity of her queen's apartment. The meal progressed, a carefully choreographed ballet of service and consumption. Lena cleared appetizer plates of tuna tataki and replaced them with the main courses. Filet mignon for Davenport, pan-seared halibut for Pierce, miso-glazed black cod for Mr. Kobayashi. Davenport held court, his voice the dominant instrument in the small orchestra of their table. He was selling, persuading, performing for Mr. Kobayashi's benefit. The potential deal, a joint venture to acquire a German manufacturing company, hung heavy in the air. Then perhaps seeking to establish a more intimate rapport, or simply to indulge his ego, Davenport switched to German, a safe channel, he assumed, a private language in the English-speaking maelstrom of New York City. What were the odds that a waitress, a struggling actress from Ohio, or a student from California, would understand the nuanced, business-centric German of a Frankfurt boardroom? He leaned forward, a conspiratorial glint in his eye. "Also, Herr Kobayashi," he began, his tone shifting, becoming sharper, more direct. "The board of Nordstern AG is weak, a collection of old men clinging to the past." Lena, polishing cutlery at the service station, felt the words hit her like a physical blow. It was the German of her former life, High German spoken with a slight Hessian accent, the dialect of the Frankfurt financial district. Her hands froze, then forced themselves to continue their methodical polishing. "Don't react. You're invisible." Pierce, ever the sycophant, chimed in his own German, less polished, more eager. "Absolutely. We have internal projections showing we can cut their operating costs by 40%. Project Chimera will be a masterpiece." Nordstern AG. Project Chimera. The names echoed in the silent, ruined chambers of Lena's memory. Nordstern AG, a mid-sized family-owned engineering firm from Stuttgart, known for its quality and its deep commitment to its employees. 3 years ago, in Berlin, she had been the lead analyst on their defense strategy, fighting off a hostile takeover. The aggressor, a shadowy shell corporation, its true backers hidden. The plan she drafted would have saved them, but the data she'd based her strategy on was leaked, subtly altered, making her appear incompetent, even criminally negligent. The deal collapsed. Her reputation was shattered. The code name for that hostile takeover, Project Chimera. Her heart hammered against her ribs. It couldn't be a coincidence. The world was vast, but the world of high-stakes international finance was a small, incestuous village, cold dread mixed with white-hot rage. These men weren't just arrogant patrons. They were vultures picking at a carcass she had tried to save. They were connected to the moment her life broke in two. She had to remain calm. She needed to hear more. She moved from the service station, approaching their table under the guise of refilling water glasses, her eyes downcast, her face a neutral mask. Davenport, now fully warmed up, gestured dismissively toward the restaurant staff. "One must loathe it," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. "One just has to ignore these people. They're just part of the decoration." He looked directly at Lena, though his eyes seemed to pass right through her. Lowering his voice, he spoke to Pierce. "Look at her. Probably a failed artist or something. A pretty empty face. Good enough to serve the rabble, but not a single thought behind it." Pierce chuckled nervously. "Alice," he agreed. "She does what she's told. That's all that matters." The insult, so casual, so profoundly dehumanizing, almost took her breath away. Not the worst thing she'd ever heard, but layered on top of the revelation about Nordstern AG, it was a match thrown onto gasoline. The weary ache in her feet vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. The ghost of Berlin was no longer a faint memory. It was sitting at table 7, eating filet mignon and mocking her in the language of her birth. Mr. Kobayashi remained silent. He took a slow, deliberate sip of water, his eyes meeting Lena's for a fleeting moment. No pity, but a flicker of something else. Curiosity, discomfort. He was a witness. Davenport, oblivious, continued. "The point is, we have to act fast. As soon as we have control, we'll outsource the research and development department. Too expensive, too sentimental. Their most valuable patents are all we want." It was the exact strategy the Shell Corporation had planned 3 years ago. The strategy she had warned Nordstern against. Davenport wasn't just connected to her downfall. He was its architect, hidden behind layers of corporate secrecy. Years later, thousands of miles away, he was laying bare his sins on her table, assuming she was too stupid to understand. Lena finished pouring the water, her hand miraculously steady, her mind racing. The humiliation, the years of struggle, the injustice coalesced into a single point of clarity. She wasn't just a waitress. She was Lena Vogel, and she remembered everything. The rest of the main course was a blur. She moved on autopilot, her mind a whirlwind of German phrases, corporate logos, and the ghost of her former self. The rage simmered beneath a layer of icy calm. An opportunity had fallen into her lap. Dangerous, terrifying, irresistible. Not revenge, not yet. Justice. She served dessert, chocolate lava cake for Davenport and Pierce, yuzu sorbet for Mr. Kobayashi. The German conversation continued, filled with financial jargon and self-congratulatory laughter. Davenport boasted about a previous acquisition, a tech firm in Munich, how they'd trimmed the fat, laying off hundreds right before the holidays. Finally, the meal was over. The plates cleared, the wine gone. Davenport leaned back, patting his stomach with the satisfaction of a Roman emperor. He snapped his fingers, a gesture of pure entitlement. "The check," he commanded in English. As she turned to retrieve it, he delivered his final, dismissive remark in German, a parting shot for his companions. "Hurry up, girl. We have more important things to do than wait for you to drag your little shoes over here." Lena stopped. Her back to them, the restaurant faded away. The clatter, the murmur, the distant sirens dissolved into a low hum. Only table 7 and the echo of his words. "Hurry up, girl." She took a slow, deliberate breath. She could walk away, bring the check, accept his paltry tip, disappear back into her anonymous life. The safe choice, the smart choice. But 19 months of biting her tongue, of swallowing her pride, of accepting her unjust fate, were over. She turned around, walking back to the table not with the hurried shuffle of a servant, but with the steady, confident gait she used to employ walking into a boardroom. No bill folder in her hands, just empty hands clasped loosely in front of her. She looked directly at Dominic Davenport, holding his gaze until he was forced to acknowledge her as more than a piece of furniture. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Lena smiled, but not her waitress smile. This one was sharp, precise, devoid of warmth. Then she spoke, her voice quiet, yet cutting through the air. Her German was flawless, not the casual German Davenport had been using. but the formal German of a university-educated professional. She began, her tone perfectly level. "Excuse me, sir. Your bill will be right out, but I must point something out to you." The effect was instantaneous, seismic. Davenport's smug expression shattered. His jaw went slack. His eyes widened in disbelief. He looked as if a statue had just started speaking to him. Pierce froze, chocolate on his fork, his face paling. Mr. Kobayashi placed his napkin on the table, leaned forward and watched Lena with intense interest. Lena continued, her gaze locked on Davenport. "Your grammar is a bit sloppy when addressing a lady, even if she is just a waitress. Junge Frau, or Fräulein, would be more appropriate than Mädchen. It lacks respect." A small, precise incision, more than a comment on language, a challenge to his perceived superiority. Davenport sputtered, a clumsy mix of German and English. "Was zum Teufel? What do you think you're doing?" Lena's smile tightened. Echoing Pierce's earlier remark, she said, "I'm just doing what I'm told. That's all that matters, right? But sometimes one overhears things. For example, that the board of Nordstern AG is weak, or that Project Chimera aims to dismantle their research and development department to get to their patents." Every word a hammer blow. Pierce dropped his fork, the clatter echoing through the now silent space. Davenport's face was ashen, the blood drained completely. He was seeing her for the first time, a horrifying dawning of recognition mixing with raw fear. He didn't know who she was, but he knew she was not a waitress. She was a threat. The silence was thick with tension. Davenport stared, his mind racing, trying to place her, categorize her, understand the monumental miscalculation he had made. A man who controlled every variable, yet a random variable had just recited the core tenets of his most secret predatory plan. He tried to regain control, falling back on blustering authority. "Das ist absurd. That's absurd. You have no idea what you're talking about. You've been eavesdropping on private conversations. That's grounds for immediate dismissal." Lena didn't flinch. The fear she had lived with for nearly 2 years was being burned away by righteous fire. "Davenport Capital," she replied, her voice dangerously calm. "Oh, I believe I know exactly what I'm talking about, Mr. Davenport. Project Chimera isn't a new plan. It's an old plan repackaged from 3 years ago, pushed by a shell company called Ether Holdings to disguise the true investors." At the mention of Ether Holdings, Pierce made a choking sound. An old entity, buried deep in their corporate history, used for their most aggressive operations. For the waitress to know that name was impossible. Davenport's eyes narrowed, the bluster gone, replaced by a cold reptilian focus. "Who are you?" he demanded, switching back to English, as if the language itself could offer a shield. This was the moment, the culmination. Lena stood taller, letting the mask of the weary waitress fall away completely. In its place, the sharp, brilliant financial analyst she had once been. "My name," she said, speaking slowly and deliberately, her German crisp and clear. "Lena Vogel." She let her name hang in the air. To Pierce and Mr. Kobayashi, it meant nothing. But she wasn't looking at them. She was looking at Dominic Davenport. Confusion flickered in his eyes, then a frantic search through his mental archives. And then, the moment the puzzle pieces clicked into place, his face went from ashen to bleached bone. Pure horror. He remembered. The lead analyst at Deutsche Strategic Bank in Berlin. Lena pressed her advantage, her voice resonating with her history. "My name is Lena Vogel. I was the lead analyst at Deutsche Strategic Bank in Berlin. I wrote the defensive strategy for Nordstern AG against your first attack. The strategy that would have worked if my data hadn't been stolen and manipulated to discredit me and destroy my career. You didn't just get me fired, you erased me. You thought I'd disappeared forever." She stepped closer, leaning in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You hid behind your lawyers and shell companies, but I always suspected your work. I just never had proof until tonight. You just served it to me on a silver platter, along with your insults." Davenport, the titan of industry, the king of Aria, was speechless, a ghost staring back at him. Pierce looked about to be physically ill, a passenger on a ship taking on water. Then a new voice. Mr. Kobayashi, who had watched with quiet intensity, folded his hands. He looked at Lena, speaking to her directly, his English formal and precise. Miss Vogel, your name is familiar. My company, Kobayashi Heavy Industries, was approached by Ether Holdings 2 years ago with a similar proposal for one of our competitors. We declined. We found their methods dishonorable. He turned his cool gaze upon Davenport. Davenport-san, our dinner is concluded, and so is our potential partnership. We will not be moving forward with Project Chimera or any venture with your firm. With that, he stood, gave a slight, respectful bow to Lena, not Davenport, and walked away, leaving stunned silence in the wreckage of Davenport's evening, his deal, and quite possibly his career. Mr. Kobayashi's departure was a gavel striking, ending the proceedings. Dominic Davenport, who had been frozen, lurched into motion, his face a thunderous mask of fury and humiliation. You, he hissed at Lena, his voice trembling with rage. You're finished. I'll have you blacklisted from every restaurant, every coffee shop in this city. You'll be scrubbing floors for the rest of your pathetic life. Do you hear me? Lena, his voice trembling with rage. You're finished. I'll have you blacklisted from every restaurant, every coffee shop in this city. You'll be scrubbing floors for the rest of your pathetic life. Do you hear me? His voice was rising, attracting the attention of nearby tables. Patrons were starting to turn and stare, sensing the drama unfolding. Maria, the manager, who had been watching from a distance with a worried frown, began to stride purposefully toward them. Lena stood her ground. The threats that would have terrified her yesterday now seemed hollow. You already did your worst to me, Herr Davenport, she said, her voice steady. You took my career, my reputation, my home. You think threatening my waitressing job scares me now? You just confessed to corporate espionage and market manipulation in front of a witness. I think you have bigger problems. Just then, Maria arrived at the table. Is there a problem here, Mr. Davenport? She asked, her tone firm but professional. This employee of yours? Dominic sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at Lena. She's insane. She's been harassing us, making wild accusations. I want her fired now. Maria looked from Dominic's apoplectic face to Lena's unnervingly calm one. She had worked in this business for 30 years. She knew the difference between a hysterical employee and a cornered millionaire. Lena, she said gently, why don't you go take your break? I'll handle this. She's not taking a break. She's fired, Dominic roared. Actually, Lena said, unpinning the small magnetic name tag from her uniform. She placed it gently on the table next to the half-eaten lava cake. I quit. She looked at Maria with a small apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Maria, for the scene. Maria just shook her head slightly, a glimmer of understanding and perhaps even pride in her eyes. Go on, honey. It's all right. As Lena turned to walk away, a hand gently touched her arm. She turned. It was Mr. Kobayashi. He had waited for her near the restaurant's exit. In his hand, he held out a sleek black business card. Ms. Vogt, he said, his voice low. What Mr. Davenport did to you was an injustice. What he planned to do to Norst is a disease in our industry. My flight back to Tokyo is not until Friday. I would be very interested to hear your full story. Perhaps we have mutual interests. Lena looked down at the card. Kenji Kobayashi, CEO, Kobayashi Heavy Industries. It felt impossibly heavy in her hand, a lifeline thrown from the most unexpected of quarters. Thank you, Mr. Kobayashi, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I will call you. He gave another short, respectful bow and was gone. Lena walked through the restaurant's kitchen, past the stunned faces of her now former colleagues. She didn't stop at her locker. She walked straight out the back service door and into the cool night air of the alleyway. She leaned against the rough brick wall, the adrenaline finally beginning to subside, leaving her trembling. She had done it. She had stood up to the man who ruined her and had in one spectacular fashion blown up her quiet, miserable life. She was unemployed. She had no plan. But for the first time in a very long time, she felt free. The ghost of Berlin was no longer haunting her. She had given it a voice. Back inside, Arya Dominic Davenport was left to stew in the ruins. His deal was dead. His reputation in front of a major international player was shattered, and a ghost from his past now had a name, a face, and a powerful new potential ally. As he threw his credit card on the table to pay the exorbitant bill, his mind was not on the money. It was on one thing, silencing Lenovo for good this time. The first domino had fallen, and it had landed squarely on him. The war was just beginning. The 24 hours after Lena walked out of Aria were a surreal blend of terror and exhilaration. The initial rush of righteous victory gave way to the stark reality of her situation. She was jobless with dwindling savings and a powerful enemy who now knew exactly where to find her. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart leapt into her throat, expecting a threatening message or a call from a lawyer representing Davenport Capital. She spent the first night sleepless in her small Queens apartment, the business card of Kenji Kobayashi sitting on her nightstand like a talisman. Could she trust him? His gesture seemed genuine, but in her world, altruism was a rare and often deceptive commodity. He was a corporate titan, just like Davenport. Sharks rarely defended the fish. They just competed over who got to eat them. By morning, resolve had hardened her fear. She had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. She took a deep breath and dialed the number on the card. A crisp, professional voice answered immediately. When she gave her name, she was put through to Mr. Kobayashi without a moment's hesitation. Ms. Vogue. His voice was as calm and measured as it had been in the restaurant. I'm glad you called. I have taken the liberty of securing a conference room at my hotel. Can you meet me in 1 hour? An hour later, Lena found herself not in a sterile conference room, but in a sprawling penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental overlooking Central Park. Mr. Kobayashi was there along with a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, whom he introduced as Akari Tanaka, the head of his legal department. There were no pretenses. Lena spent the next 2 hours recounting her entire story, starting from her promising career in Berlin, her work on the Nord's defense, the sudden data leak, the doctored reports that pointed directly at her, and the swift, brutal way her firm and the industry had cast her out. She explained how she had fled to New York, taking on a menial job to stay under the radar, ashamed and defeated. Mr. Kobayashi and Ms. Tanaka listened without interruption, their expressions serious. When she was finished, Ms. Tanaka spoke first. What you describe, Ms. Forked. She said her English perfect is a classic smear, an acquired tactic. Discredit the defense from within, create chaos, and then swoop in to pick up the pieces at a discount. Ether Red Holdings was the legal instrument, but Davenport was the mind behind it. To prove it, we need more than your testimony. We need the original, untampered data. It's gone, Lena said, the old hopelessness creeping back. It was on a secure server at the bank. After I was fired, my access was revoked and my files were archived, which means they were probably wiped. Perhaps, Mr. Kobayashi said, leaning forward. But men like Davenport are arrogant. Arrogance leads to carelessness. They may believe the evidence is destroyed, but digital ghosts are hard to exorcise completely. This is where we may be of assistance. He explained his interest was not purely altruistic. Davenport Capital's predatory tactics were a cancer in the global market. Kobayashi Heavy Industries believed in building and sustaining, not tearing down and selling for parts. Davenport's attempt to recruit him into Project Chimera was an insult to his business philosophy. Helping Lena was a matter of honor, but it was also a strategic move to eliminate a dishonorable competitor. We have resources misvoked, Mr. Kobayashi stated plainly. Technological, legal, and financial. We can fund an investigation. We can hire the best forensic data recovery specialists. But we need your expertise. You know where to look. You know the names, the file structures, the protocols from your time at the bank. Just as this new, unbelievable alliance was being forged, Lena's phone rang. It was an unknown number with a German country code. Her blood ran cold. She hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. Lena Fisto. Lena Fed, is that you? The voice was old, crackling, and instantly familiar. It was Professor Alric Brandt, her former mentor from her university days in Heidelberg, a man who taught corporate ethics and was one of the few people who had believed in her innocence. Professor Brandt, she whispered, stunned. My child, I have been trying to reach you for a year, he said, his voice filled with urgency. I saw an article this morning, a small mention in an online financial bulletin. A partnership between Davenport Capital and Kobayashi Heavy Industries has been abruptly canceled after a dramatic dinner incident in New York. It mentioned Davenport by name. I had a terrible feeling it had something to do with you. Professor Howe. It doesn't matter, he interrupted. Listen to me. After you were disgraced, I never believed it. I started my own quiet inquiries. I have a former student, a good man, who now works in the IT security department at Deutsche Strategic Bank. He always felt your case was handled improperly. We spoke last night. Your files were not wiped, Lena. They were placed in a deep archive, a segregated server used for litigation holds. They couldn't wipe them without creating a suspicious data gap. They are dormant, but they exist. Lena stared at the phone, her mind reeling. The one piece of evidence she thought was lost forever. The digital ghost Mr. Kobayashi had just spoken of was real. There is more, Professor Brandt continued, his voice low. The man who replaced you, the one who benefited most from your dismissal, was a senior analyst named Henrik Bauer. Bauer left the bank 6 months after you did. He now holds a very comfortable, very senior position at the European headquarters of Davenport Capital. The final piece clicked into place. It was an inside job. Bauer had likely been Davenport's mole all along. He had stolen and altered her data, framed her, and been rewarded for his treason. Lena looked from her phone to Mr. Kobayashi and Ms. Tanaka. Their expressions were grim, determined. The hunt was no longer just for a ghost. They now had a name, a location, and a target. A transatlantic alliance had just been forged, combining Lena's intimate knowledge, Kobayashi's immense resources, and Brandt's crucial intelligence from the heart of the old empire. The war against Dominic Davenport was about to go global. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in controlled, relentless pressure. The penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental, with its panoramic views of Central Park, was transformed from a symbol of luxury into a high-tech transatlantic war room. Whiteboards covered in timelines and names replaced expensive art on the walls. The quiet hum of servers and encrypted communication lines replaced the gentle classical music of the hotel. This was Lena's new office, and she had never felt more at home. She found herself at the center of a formidable team. There was Akari Tanaka Kobayashi's head of legal, a woman whose calm demeanor masked a mind like a steel trap. She moved with quiet purpose, her calls to legal teams in New York and Frankfurt surgically precise. Then there was Salito, the forensic tech analyst, a young man who seemed to subsist entirely on coffee and instant noodles, his fingers flying across multiple keyboards in a blur. He spoke rarely, but when he did, it was to announce a breakthrough. Lena, for her part, was the heart of the operation. She was the institutional memory, the one who knew the names, the corporate culture of the bank, the protocols, and most importantly, the psychological makeup of the people who had wronged her. The weariness in her eyes was replaced by a sharp analytical fire. Their first target was not Dominic Davenport, but the man who had been his instrument, Henrik Bauer. Men like Bauer are driven by two things: greed and ego. Lena explained to the team, pointing to his photo on the whiteboard. He betrayed his firm for money, but he took my job for status. He'll believe his position at Davenport Capital makes him untouchable. That's his weakness. Ms. Tanaka's investigators in Europe began painting a vivid picture of Bauer's life. He wasn't just living well, he was living recklessly. They tracked his lavish spending through public records and discreet sources: a new Porsche, a weekend apartment in Zurich, an online footprint that showed a taste for high-stakes online poker. He's leaking money, Ms. Tanaka observed during one late-night briefing, pointing to a financial summary. His salary is substantial, but his expenditures are astronomical. He's supplementing his income. Saito found the source. He's making small, frequent trades in tech and pharmaceutical stocks. He announced, pulling up a color-coded chart. They're timed perfectly, always a day or two before major announcements by companies Davenport Capital has an interest in. It's classic insider trading. He's gotten sloppy, arrogant. While the investigators built their case against Bauer, Ms. Tanaka launched the legal assault on Deutsche Strategic Bank. The initial response was a wall of corporate resistance. The bank's lawyers were dismissive, citing privacy laws and statute of limitations. Ms. Tanaka was unfazed. In a tense video conference with the bank's general counsel in Frankfurt, she laid out her position with chilling clarity. "Herr Schmidt," she began, her voice deceptively pleasant, "we are not on a fishing expedition. We have credible intelligence indicating that a former employee, Lena F., was the victim of corporate espionage originating from within your institution, leading to significant financial and reputational damage. We also have reason to believe the evidence of this crime is stored on a specific litigation hold server, serial number 7, Alpha Delta. Refusing a legitimate targeted discovery request will force us to file a motion compelling your cooperation." The optics of a major bank actively hiding evidence of a crime to protect a saboteur would be unfortunate, especially when our client Kobayashi Industries is considering its future European banking partners. The veiled threat combining legal force with immense financial pressure worked. Within 48 hours, a massive encrypted data file was securely transferred to Saito's servers. The next 72 hours were a tense waiting game. Zeta worked around the clock, his corner of the suite littered with empty coffee cups. Lena found she couldn't sleep. She paced the suite, the ghosts of her past swirling around her. What if they found nothing? What if the data had been corrupted beyond recovery? On the third night, just as dawn was breaking over the city, Silito called her over. His face was pale with exhaustion, but his eyes were bright. "I found it," he whispered, pointing to his central monitor. "It's beautiful." On the screen were two documents side by side. The first was titled NV Nordstrat VFL.x, her file, her work. The second was HB Nordstrat VF Final Ribbons, created 97 minutes after hers. "I've run a differential analysis," Cito said, typing a command. The screen lit up with highlighted text. In Bauer's version, revenue projections were lowered by 12%. Operating cost estimates were inflated by 18%. Debt-to-equity ratios were subtly skewed. They were small changes, individually plausible, but together they painted a picture of Lena's strategy as reckless and doomed to fail. It was the work of a skilled liar. "And now for the magic," Cito said. He brought up another window, the server access log. It showed Lena uploading her file at 4:15 p.m. Berlin time. It then showed an access and download of that same file at 4:30 p.m. from an IP address assigned to Heinrich Bauer's terminal. Finally, it showed the upload of his revised, sabotaged version at 5:52 p.m. And then the final damning piece of evidence, a log of an encrypted data packet sent from Bauer's terminal at 6:10 p.m. to an offshore server in the Cayman Islands. A server Ms. Tanaka's team had already definitively linked to Ether Red Holdings, Dominic Davenport's shell corporation. Lena stared at the screen, her breath catching in her chest. It was all there. The entire crime laid bare in lines of code and timestamps. It was the truth, pristine and undeniable. She felt a tear slide down her cheek, not of sadness, but of profound, earth-shattering vindication. The final act was swift. Ms. Tanaka and a German lawyer flew to Geneva. They didn't storm Bauer's office. They invited him for a coffee at a discreet 5-star hotel. He arrived looking smug and slightly annoyed. He barely had time to order an espresso before Ms. Tanaka slid a tablet across the table. On it was the evidence of his insider trading. "We believe this constitutes a significant breach of your employment contract with Davenport Capital, not to mention a violation of several Swiss and EU financial regulations," she said calmly. Bauer palled, sputtering denials. Ms. Tanaka let him finish, then slid a second tablet across the table. This one displayed the server logs from the bank. His smugness evaporated, replaced by raw animal panic. "My client Lena has no interest in seeing you in prison, Herr Bauer," Ms. Tanaka said, her voice like ice. "She wants the man who gave the orders. You have one chance to give us a full-signed confession detailing Dominic Davenport's role in the entire affair. In return, we will provide this evidence of your unrelated financial activities to the authorities, who will likely be far more lenient on a cooperative witness than on a common criminal." Cornered and exposed, Heinrich Bauer broke completely. He confessed to everything. With Bauer's signed confession, the dossier was complete. They didn't go to the authorities first. That path was slow, prone to backroom deals. Mr. Kobayashi wanted a public execution. He personally contacted the editors of 3 of the world's most respected financial newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and the Handelsblatt. The entire package was delivered to them simultaneously with an embargo of 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The next day, Lena was awake, watching the sunrise from the penthouse window when the first alerts hit her phone. The headlines were brutal. Davenport's deceit leaked files reveal years of corporate espionage. The Nordstro Davenport Capital framed an analyst to seize a German gem, the fall of a titan. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Trading on stocks linked to Davenport Capital was halted. The SEC, BaFin, and the Swiss authorities announced coordinated, wide-ranging investigations. Davenport's investors, the powerful men and women he had made rich, turned on him with the ferocity of a shark pack. The emergency board meeting was not a negotiation. It was an amputation. They severed every tie, clawed back every bonus they legally could, and threw him out to face the consequences alone. He was a pariah. Lena watched an interview with a visibly shaken board member on TV. "We had no idea," the man lied. "Dominic Davenport acted alone. His actions are a betrayal of everything we stand for." A week later, a formal settlement offer arrived from Deutsche Strategic Bank. It was a 9-figure sum, a number so large it seemed unreal. It was hush money, an apology, and a restitution all rolled into one. Looking at it, Lena felt a strange detachment. The money was validation, but it couldn't buy back the lost years, the shame, the struggle. Her future was an open, intimidating expense. She had her name back, her reputation not just restored, but enhanced. Job offers flooded in from investment banks and private equity firms, all eager to hire the woman who had outplayed Dominic Davenport. But the idea of returning to that life of poring over spreadsheets to make the rich richer felt like a betrayal of her own journey. She met Mr. Kobayashi one last time in the now dismantled war room. "You have a choice, Miss Volk," he said. "You can return to the game, a more powerful player than before, or you can help change the rules." He laid out his vision, the Prometheus Institute, a nonprofit foundation dedicated to corporate ethics and accountability. It would be funded by a coalition of companies led by Kobayashi Industries who believed that long-term value came from integrity, not predation. It would investigate corporate malfeasance, provide legal aid to whistleblowers, and advocate for stronger regulations. "I need someone to lead its European operations," Mr. Kobayashi said. "Someone with the skills of an analyst, the heart of a survivor, and the courage of a fighter. Someone who understands exactly what we are up against." Lena looked out the window at the vast city below. She had come here to disappear. She had been a ghost, a whisper. Now she was being offered a sword. She would not be analyzing companies to acquire them. She would be analyzing them to hold them accountable. She would be the guardian she never had. A slow smile spread across her face, the first genuine, joyful smile in years. "Mr. Kobayashi," she said, her voice clear and strong. "When do I start?" That's the incredible story of Lena V., a woman who reminds us that strength and intelligence are not defined by a job title or a uniform. It's a powerful testament to the fact that you never truly know the battles the person standing next to you has fought or the hidden power they hold within. Lena's story is about more than just revenge. It's about resilience, the reclamation of one's identity, and the surprising alliances that can form in the fight for justice. It shows that even in a world that seems to be dominated by the loud and the arrogant, a quiet, steady voice speaking the truth can bring down an empire. If you were inspired by Lena's courage and her fight for what is right, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength. And for more true life stories of incredible twists of fate and triumphant underdogs, make sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Thank you for listening.